I've been reading this book for a few weeks, and there are certain things that I wanted us to share. So we're just gonna read a few pages on it, and I don't know if you can see clearly or if I need to make it a bit bigger.
Make it bigger, please.
Okay. All right. Is that better?
Yes, but we only seem to have a piece of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's not the full amount of it.
Yeah, it's not the full.
Oh,
See it, but it's not the full screen.
Yeah,
you need to lengthen the screen a bit.
let me try to make it full screen. No, it's not changing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's better now. Now I can see it better. Okay. Now, we wanted to recap what we learned last month. So last month we were looking at health. Does anyone remember what we looked at? Anything that you still remember that was exciting for you? Because we did the first week of February. We looked at health as well, and I was there, and a few and Brother Simba as well. So if anyone remembers something that we learned last month, that was interesting for you, can someone share? Or have we forgotten everything we learned? Anyone? No one?
Oh, we went there.
Okay, that's fine.
Mark,
Let's ask from the people who were there.
the functions of the body. You know, organs.
We looked at functions of the body, and we looked at the order of organization of the body. Now, we looked at the smallest, what's the smallest basic unit that we started with? Do we remember?
Cells.
Wonderful. That's a very good. But when we come to cells, cells are the smallest living part of our bodies. So they are the smallest. They are the smallest aspect of life. That's where life begins, in the cell. However, we also begin. There is two other levels of structure that we have, which are atoms. So like oxygen, carbon dioxide. So we've got these atoms, and these atoms come together and they form molecules. So when we have water, it's H2O. So it's hydrogen and oxygen coming together, making molecules. Now, these molecules come together and they make the cell. Before the cell, atoms are not alive and molecules are not alive. Life begins at the cellular level. So when we've got the cell, we've got life. Now, we talked a little bit about the cell. The cell is quite fascinating. And we looked at how in the beginning, when the cell was identified, and we looked at history of the cell, that people identified it. They thought it was a simple cell. But what did we find out? What did we find out with the cell? Anyone remember? No one remembers. Okay, so what we looked at is when they first saw the cell through a microscope, they saw it was just, there was a little dark dot and it was like a box. And they called it a simple cell because they thought it was so simple. But as technology developed and we had stronger microscopes that could see, electronic microscopes, and they could see inside the cell more, they started to identify so many amazing structures in the cell. In the cell, we've got some incredible structures. And when we look at it, because when we think about the body is amazing, how God created it. But when we go down to the cellular level, it's even more amazing because God designing the cell in such an incredible way and how it works, it's just mind-blowing. I think I shared the cell before and share it again. And what we look at inside the cell, there is something incredible. Can anyone tell me something that we find when we go into the cell? Now, as we learn all the things that we're learning, we see how amazing God is, how absolutely incredibly clever, how absolutely detail-oriented God is, and how particular He is as well. Does anyone remember anything we looked at about the cell? Let's talk about the cell for a minute before we jump onto the next. Is someone speaking? Is someone trying to say something? Okay. Have we forgotten everything about the cell? Do we know anything about the cell? Guys? Are we saying nothing?
Well, cells,
I-
a group of cells come together, make up tissues.
Yes, absolutely. So a group of cells come together and they make up tissues, and a group of tissues come together and they make up what?
Organs.
Organs, yes.
Yeah, so tissue come together and they make up organs, and organs come together and make up
Systems.
organ systems. And then the organ systems come together and they make up an organism, which is you and me. Now, if we go back to the cell itself, and I think I shared last time, I shared a snippet into the cell, and which absolutely kicked out the idea of it being a simple cell. Now, if we go on to the cell itself, we see that it's absolutely incredible, and God has designed it in such a special way. Now, there are so many things that we look at. If we're looking at the different parts of the body, the brain, it's amazing. The eyes are amazing. They are better than any camera. We're looking at getting cameras. They are better than any camera that the smartest people can create. The brain is better than the smartest computer you can think of. And when we're looking at when we're looking I'm just trying to share my screen. This is inside a cell, and there's something inside a cell that is absolutely, everything inside the cell is incredible, but there's something even more special. Now, this is the cell that we looked at last time. And if we look inside here, we can see that this is far from being simple. This is far from being a simple structure. Could we call this simple?
No.
Sorry. Would we call this simple at all?
No.
Beyond our understanding.
And when you think about how tiny this is, because we can't see this with our naked eyes, we can only see this under a very, very powerful microscope. And when you imagine that God designed this in his goodness and in his cleverness and in his wisdom, he designed the cell, and he designed it to work together with other cells, and the cell is made up of things that are non-living. So we looked at the atoms, non-living, they make molecules non-living, and they make a cell living. How is that possible? Now we begin life from things that are not alive. Now, inside a cell, we have different organelles that do lots of different things. We've got organelles like that small kidney-shaped organelle there. So organelle just means little organs. We see these little organelles. Those are powerful energy converters, energy makers. So they are like our powerhouse. Our mitochondria, they make energy for the body. So when we've got organs that are very energy centric, that do a lot of work, like the heart, the muscles, you see they have a lot of mitochondria in their cells. All right. So different cells have different structures depending on the work that they do. We've got structures in there that are called lysosomes. They take any dead parts of the cells, dead organelles, and they destroy them. In a strong acid, they destroy them and keep them in there. So and we see that the liver, because it does a lot of taking toxins, it has a lot of these kinds of structures. And we've got phagocytes, immune which help us with our immune system to fight enemies, to fight microbes that enter our bodies. So we've got different organelles in different cells, and there is one organelle that is amazing. That's the brain of the cell, and that organelle is called a nucleus. And the nucleus contains our DNA. Our DNA, who we are. Now, it's so, when I look at the nucleus, it reminds me of the most holy place. Right in the middle, in the sanctuary. And in the most holy place, we have the 10 commandments. And the DNA has a double helix. Now, when we look at our DNA is we have, well, how many cells do we think we have in our body? How many cells do we have in our body? Does anyone know?
Trillions.
Trillions. Now, in each of the cells, we have all these organelles, we have different organelles, but each one of them, unless there are some specific ones like the red blood cells, which do not have a nucleus, they have a nucleus. And the nucleus is the like the blueprint of who you are. So your DNA is unique to you. And your DNA is found in the nucleus. And every cell has your unique DNA. And we see that every cell has the same DNA. So whether it's a heart cell, a kidney cell, an eye cell, it has the same DNA. Now, what makes it different? It switches on and switches off certain parts of the DNA. I'm just gonna stop sharing this one. And I want to share Can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Words are very small. Can you make them large, please? Can't read it.
Let me try. Okay,
That's better.
thank you. Let's jump over. This is an incredible book. As I was reading this, sorry, it's not going to where I wanted to go. So as I was saying that the DNA reminds me of the most holy place where we have the 10 commandments. And the 10 commandments give us the instruction on how to live a holy life. And the DNA in the cell gives the body, the cell, instruction on how to be. Now, when we look at how God designed the nucleus, where it gives instructions, it doesn't leave. The DNA does not leave the nucleus. A copy is copied, and that copy is what comes out of the DNA of the nucleus. And it's not changeable. You can't change the DNA because it's kept in such a way that you cannot change it. So only a copy of it comes out with the instruction of making whether it's making some molecules like protein and whatever it's so it gets in it gives instructions on what to make. A good example is if you're in the library, and in that library you've got a very special and very expensive book, and that very special book, you can't take it out. It's locked up in a cabinet. So what you do is when you need to take to read the formula or the recipe, what you do is you take a copy out. And that's the recipe. Once the recipe comes out, other parts of the cell get the recipe and they make the product that is needed by the body. And we see that the DNA is so protected. We know that nowadays people are trying to mess about with DNA. They're trying to tweak it because it's something that we're learning so much from it. Now, The DNA molecule is long. It's like 6 feet, so it's taller than me if we were to stretch it out. However, God in his cleverness has it's super folded that it fits in a space that is microscopic, that we can only see through a microscope. And every time I see these things, it just reminds me how wonderful God is. Now, we're going to read from a violation of physical law. Men, sorry, just keeps moving about. Man from the hand of his creator. Man came from the hand of his creator, perfect in organization and beautiful in form. The fact that he has for 6,000 years withstood the ever increasing weight of disease and crime is conclusive proof of the power of endurance with which he was first endowed. And although the antediluvians generally gave themselves up to sin without restraint, it was more than 2,000 years before the violation of natural laws was sensibly felt. Now we see that if Adam had not been given so much vitality, had Adam originally possessed no greater physical power than men now have, the race would have become extinct. We would have become extinct. But Adam has such a vital force in him that we are still here today. Now, there is something very important that I want us to look at. And we are looking at multitudes in distress. Multitudes in distress. Testimonies for the church. When Christ saw the multitude, so here we are at when Jesus was on the mountainside, where he fed the 5,000. And he was looking at them, people, multitude that gathered about him. He was moved with compassion on them because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. Christ saw the sickness, the sorrow, the want, and degradation of the multitudes. He saw these people in sorrow. Christ saw the sickness, the sorrow, the want and degradation of the multitudes that thronged his steps. To him were presented the needs and wars of the humanity throughout the world. Among the high and the low, the most honored and the most degraded, he beheld souls who were longing for the very blessing he had come to bring. Souls who needed souls who needed souls who needed only a knowledge of his grace to become subjects of his kingdom. Then saith he unto his disciples, not sure why I'm not scrolling properly. He said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plenty. Okay. Come on. My screen keeps jumping onto the wrong page. Okay. So we know that the verse that says the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. He understands all the circumstances that have led them afar. Let me stop sharing this one. I'll share this one instead. When men take a course which needlessly expands their vitality or beclouds their intellect, I think it's still jumped the thing I wanted. So let me read it from here. Okay. Sorry, can you still hear me?
You cannot hear
I
you.
can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh, sorry. I'm having problems here. I'm not sure why it's not showing my video. It's just stopped. But okay. So we're looking at Christ on the mountain, and he had a lot of people that were looking up to him. Multitudes. They looked desperate. They looked really they looked like lambs without a shepherd, sheep without a shepherd. And he knew that he had a solution for them. They were seeking help, and he knew he had a solution for them. When he saw them, um, he had come to bring, he beheld souls who were longing for the very blessing he had come to bring. Christ had brought exactly the blessing that they needed. Souls who needed only a knowledge of his grace to become subjects of his kingdom. Then saith unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers unto the harvest. That's Matthew 9, verse 36. Today, the same need exists. The world is in need of workers who will labor as Christ did for the suffering and the sinful. He understands all the circumstances that have led them there. Now, just making sure I'm on. So Christ is saying there is so much work that needs to be done, but the laborers are few. I was quite touched when I saw how many requests were there for prayers on prayer retreat. I think we are now over 100, 150, where people are seeking help. They are seeking God to intervene in their situations. Health, physical health, mental health, family challenges, and people are seeking prayer. They're seeking God. And I can just imagine Christ looking and saying, I have the solution. I have the solution. Now, this is the same God. When it says that God created, when we go to John 1:1, it says, it in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we know that everything that was made by Him and for Him. So the one who actually was the creative agent in creation was Christ. And he's the one who created everything in its organization. As we have looked at the organizational structure, what did God use? What did he use to create? That's a question I'm asking. What did he use to create us? What did God use to create us? Any Bible students? Remember, I'm not preaching. We are having a study here. What did God use to create?
He used words to create other living or other beings or other members of the
To create us. No,
but
to
when
create
it
us.
came to human beings, he
Yes.
hands, didn't he?
Sorry, say that again.
I said for human beings, he created us with his hands, but for other creatures, he used words.
Yes, he spoke and it was. He spoke and it was. And I think last month we looked at the different cells of different creatures. So we saw that animal cells are similar to ours. So our cells are like the animal cells. And we saw that plant cells are different. Now, when we look at a plant cell, plants are able to take sunlight and convert it into energy. And when we eat the plants have something else. So we get the nutrition from the plants. And then when we eat those plants, we also get fiber, which helps to cleanse our digestive tract. Now, when we're looking at how God created everything, it was so organized. It was well thought through. And that is absolutely incredible. Now, Jesus is looking at all these people who are looking up to him, who are struggling, and he has the solution. He is the one who created them. He's the one who has the solution. And he is seeing that there is a great work that needs to be done. But the laborers are few. When we look at our world, there is a lot of suffering. There is a lot of pain. There is a lot of disease. We're getting diseases, and we are creating diseases. There are diseases that never existed before. It used to be rare for a child to die. Now we've got so many childhood diseases. Babies are dying. They are born sick. Now we see that because God created us with such vitality, that's why humanity is still in existence today. What does Jesus say? I'm just trying to see if I can scroll down again. We see that he understands all the circumstances that have led them to fall under temptation. This is jumping. I'm jumping a page here. I'm not sure why. Okay. Let's look at some of the things that cause us to have diseases. Now, sometimes we look at people who are smoking, people who are eating badly, people who are making bad choices, and we judge them. But here we are seeing that Jesus, he understands all the circumstances that have led them to fall under temptation. This is the class that demands labor. So for us as God's children, this class demands more of our labor. We need to care more about people who are in this situation. Poverty and sin abound. Nigh and afar are souls, not only the youth, but those of all ages who are in poverty and distress, sunken in sin, and weighed down with a sense of guilt. It is the work of God's servants to seek for the souls, to pray with them and for them, and lead them step by step to the Savior. But those who do not recognize the claims of God are not the only ones who are in distress and in need of help. In the world today, where selfishness, greed, and oppression rule, many of the Lord's true children are in need and affliction, in lowly, miserable places, surrounded with poverty, disease, and guilt. Many are patiently bearing their own burden of suffering and trying to comfort the hopeless and sin-stricken about them. Many of them are almost unknown to the churches or to the ministers, but they are the Lord's lights shining amid the darkness. For these, the Lord has a special care, and He calls upon His people to be His helping hand in relieving their wants. Wherever there is a church, special attention should be given to searching out this class and ministering to them. You know, when Jesus saw people suffering and in pain, it touched him. And when we see the suffering and in pain, it should touch us too. God is organized and He designed everything to such minute detail. He cared so much about each and every cell in our body, and there is over trillions and trillions of them. And each one is precious. Now, just like each one of us is precious to God. And these trillion cells come together and working in harmony to make tissues, to make organs, to make systems, to make the body that we're living in. And God, in His wisdom, created, because He designed our bodies, He gave Ellen White guidance on how we can best look after our bodies. Now, when we look at the body, we know the 8 laws of health. Nutrition. Good nutrition is vital. And it's not just what we eat, it's how we eat, the times that we choose to eat our food. Now, when we are eating, there are certain foods that are better for us to eat. What do you think is the best breakfast to eat? Anyone? What do we think is the best breakfast for us, for our bodies, for our cells, and for our bodies? Now, when we have healthy cells, healthy body, healthy blood, healthy body. All right?
You're
What
supposed
do we think is the best breakfast?
you're supposed to eat a large meal for breakfast, not, and if you have 2 meals a day and a smaller one later on, or if you have 3, a large meal, a medium meal, and a small meal.
Now, why should we be eating 2 meals a day? What's the advantage of eating 2 meals a day?
You give your body a rest, the organs a rest. Your stomach, when it's not digesting food, it lays down and goes to sleep, folds up and goes to sleep.
Absolutely. Now, what happens? Yes, somebody else wants to say something?
I was just saying that if you're snacking, your body's not getting a rest.
Absolutely. We are not even supposed to eat a nut, not even a nut. Now you'll be thinking, I'm having an apple, I'm having a nut. Because when we start putting things during mid meals, we are giving our bodies extra work. So they have to restart the digestive process again. So some of the things that we need to look at, what we want, our cells cannot eat a carrot, and there is no teeth in our stomachs. That's another thing that we need to remember. There are no teeth in our stomach. Our food, we need to make sure we are thoroughly chewing it and masticating it, making sure that by the time we swallow it, have you ever eaten sweet corn and when you've eaten it and enjoyed it and you think I've eaten healthy, when you go to the toilet, you see bits of sweet corn? Does that mean that corn has benefited your body? Have you gained any of the nutrition from that corn? So all the corn that has come out, you could have. So when we chew our food thoroughly, it helps our bodies to absorb it because our cells need energy and nutrients. And the only way they can get it is when it's been thoroughly digested and then absorbed into the bloodstream. That's how they can take it. And to help our bodies, we need to make sure that we are chewing our food well. Now, when we look at, we've got nutrition, at our choice of food, what we choose to eat. The best meal, the best breakfast is a savory breakfast in the morning. That means it doesn't raise our blood sugar. And a steady. So this is the best time for us to eat our rice, our lentils. But I know that this is not usually what we do. We usually have cereals, we usually have fruits, we have sweet things that raise and spike our sugars. So the best thing for us is to eat something big, a big meal. What we do, we need to reverse. What we eat in the evening is what we're supposed to eat in the morning with a big salad. A big salad is good for us because it has enzymes, that it helps enzymes which help our digestion. So it helps our body to better absorb the nutrients in our food. So now when we look at, we've got nutrition. So we look at how we eat, what time are we eating, how regular are we eating? And the world is suffering because they are breaking the laws of health. When we break God's moral laws, which are in the most holy place, and when we break the health laws, which are inside our DNA, they are already written how we're supposed to, the body is designed in such a way. The laws are written. And when we follow the laws of health, we're going to see that we will thrive. Just like when we follow the 10 commandments, we're going to thrive. We have happy homes, we have happy lives. And the world is suffering outside because of of breaking these health laws. Now, when we look at how the cell, we said that there is a copy where the DNA is copied outside. Now, we see that our nutrition affects what happens. We know when we have cancer. I had a video that I was gonna share, but because of time, I don't know if I'll be able to, on how cancer develops. Cancer begins with transgression of the law. So it's refusing to follow, to obey, to follow the instructions that are given. And what we find with cancer is that, like for example, all cells they have a lifespan, and they get to a point where they die. They accept to die. But cancer says, thou shalt not die. And what leads to cancer is everything that we do every day. Breathing, eating, everything that we do. Did we look at free radicals last week? Last month we did, didn't we? We looked at free radicals. And what free radicals are, we looked at how we've got atoms. So atoms are designed that they have a nucleus and then they've got the electronic shell. And in that electronic shell, free radicals are, the electronic shell is missing an electron. Now, electrons like to travel in pairs. Now, if one is missing a pair, it becomes like a whirlwind. And we have this free radical damage. It's in search of another atom, another electron. So when these free radicals, and they are created by every day, we're creating them just by living. They're also created when we are living under stress. These free radicals also come by being in environments that are smoking, all these other things create more free radicals. Now, these free radicals, how do we get rid of them, or how do we deal with them? God has already given us a solution. So there are foods like vitamin A. Foods are high in vitamin A, vitamin C, fruits, vegetables. These are antioxidants. They have extra electrons, and they give an electron to the free radicals. So we see that God created us, and knowing that our bodies will need these antioxidants when we're eating these fruits and these nuts and these seeds and the food God has designed for us, we see that we find that it works together. The antioxidants they are donating an electron, and then free radical becomes a stable molecule. It becomes a stable atom. So we want to make sure in our diet, our diet is rich in fresh fruits, fresh food, fresh salad, a large salad with our meals. Salads help with enzymes that help us to digest and break down our food. And like I said, the more colors that we have, like colors of the rainbow, it's gonna help us with dealing with free radicals. So these free radicals are what leads to cancers and disease, diabetes, all these other diseases. It's because of free radicals. And so the best way that we can deal with them is follow God's laws, God's health laws. Just like for us to live a righteous life, we need to follow God's moral laws. So everything that God has told us to do we remember the 8 laws of health? What are they? So we talked about nutrition, good nutrition, and we see that it helps us to fight free radicals when we eat right, and when we avoid eating between meals. We allow the body to digest the food. When we chew our food well, all these things help us so that we're not putting a stress on the body, and it reduces these free radicals. Now, what are some of the other 8 health laws? We've got 8 of them. Do we remember them? Do we remember them?
Sunshine.
Sunshine. Sunlight helps. Yes, go ahead.
Trusting God.
Water, drinking water. Yeah?
Trusting God. Fresh air.
Trust in God, when we trust in God and we reduce stress levels, absolutely. Yes, so fresh air. I had fresh air. Fresh air helps. It's full. It helps us. So when we are breathing in where there's lots of trees, where there's lots of water, where there's we are detoxifying our bodies. Yes, Nathan.
Exercise.
Exercise. Absolutely. Our bodies are designed
Trust
to
in
move.
God.
Trust in God. Absolutely. I see another hand.
Temperance.
Temperance, yes, balance, temperance. Do you know temperance in all things? If we drink too much water, so how do we know if we're drinking too much water? Does anyone know? How can we know that we're drinking too much water?
It's if our urine is too clear, like it's crystal clear
Yes.
water, that can be indicative of us having too much water.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we need temperance even in the good things. We need temperance. So we avoid the bad things completely. So smoking, cigarettes, we don't even touch them, don't even go anywhere near them. And the good things, we do them with balance, with temperance. Last month, we also looked at homeostasis. That balance is key. Balance is so important. So the body is always juggling balance and is trying to deal with all the things that we put it through around us. So we need to keep the body in balance. Now, all the things that God has given us, the 8 laws of health, are wonderful antioxidants. They help us to prevent disease. They help us to fight disease. They help us to get stronger. And when we break them, we have to suffer the consequences. We have to suffer the consequences. Now, when men make a course, when men take any course which needlessly expands their vitality or beclouds their intellect, they sin against God. They do not glorify Him in their body and spirit, which are His. Yet, despite the insult which man has offered him, God's love is still extended to the race, and He permits light to shine, enabling man to see that in order to live a perfect life, he must obey the natural laws which govern his being. How important then that man should walk in this light, exercising all his powers, both of body and mind, to the glory of God. In the path of destruction, many youth of this generation, in the midst of churches, religious institutions, and professedly Christian homes, are choosing the path of destruction. Through intemperate habits, they bring upon themselves disease, and through greed to obtain money for sinful indulgences, they fall into dishonest practices. Health and character are ruined, aliens from God and outcasts from society. These poor souls feel that they are without hope, either for this life or for the life to come. The hearts of parents are broken. Men speak of these erring ones as hopeless, but God looks at them with pitying tenderness. And this is where we read that He sees where they've come from. He knows what they've gone through to be where they are. We need to be the example of health. We need to be the example of healthy living. The harvest is plenty. There are many people suffering. There are many people dying. There are many people struggling amongst our own people, in our homes, in our families, ourselves sometimes. We need to go back and obey God. He knows what's best for us. He loves us. He cares that we are healthy and happy. He cares. He desires our good. He hates, God hates to see us suffering. It breaks his heart. As a parent, if I see my daughter crying or bleeding or hurt or sad or miserable, it breaks my heart. And that's how God feels when he sees his children suffering. In his wisdom, he put the laws as a hedge for us in the sanctuary, where they could not be messed about with and they could not be changed. In our bodies, God has put in the cell the DNA inside the cell where it's not to be messed with. And we know that they have discovered that when we put our cells in a medium, so let's say even people who are at risk of getting cancer, because they've inherited the traits from their parents, when they take those cells and put them in a medium like asparagus and healthy foods, you see that those cells did not develop into cancer. We are created in such an incredible way. And God has given us rules that we must follow for our good. When we keep the 8 laws of health to a cellular level, we talked about mitochondria. When we breathe oxygen, our mitochondria need oxygen. They use oxygen and glucose from the foods that we've eaten to create energy that we use in our bodies. So the more oxygen we breathe in, the more energetic we are going to be. The more sunlight we have, the more energy we're going to have, and the more we're going to be able to fight diseases, all kinds of diseases. The more we drink water, and we drink it well. Now, there's a little secret that we need to do. When we're drinking water, we can't drink like people sometimes drink 2 liters in one go. You can't do that. You want to drink in bits. Have you ever tried to pour? I like Barbara, how she explained, Barbara O'Neill, when she explained that if you pour a bucket of water on dry ground, it all flows over. It will come out. Your body it will be too much. But if you drink in little bits, so what we want to do is to drink it in like a half a glass every half hour. So we drink in small amounts but regularly. Throughout, you're drinking, you're drinking, you're drinking. And another thing that we can do is have a grain of salt, Celtic salt, pink salt, these good salts, not the white salt. That's bad salt. We shouldn't even have it for food. So this salt, we have it as a grain in our mouth, on our tongue, and when we drink water, it helps our cells. Remember, everything that we are doing is to help to get. It has to get in the cell for it to be beneficial to us. So what we want when we're putting salts in a little grain of salt, not too much, just a grain, when we drink water, we are helping the salt, will help the cells to absorb the water, the fluid. And our cells are made up of water. There's so much water. The lysosome, all the organelles are swimming in fluid. So our bodies are 70% water. We need to make sure we are giving our bodies enough water so that they can cleanse inside out, get rid of toxins, so that all the organs, the amazing organs, can function at their best. Our kidneys, our lungs, our heart, our stomach, our digestive system. So when we give our bodies what God has said, this is what is good for you, and we do it, we don't just get blessings in being healthy in our bodies. We get multiple blessings. You know, when Daniel and his friends, when they obeyed, when they kept the laws of health, they were wiser than everybody else. They were more good looking than everybody else. I have people who is telling, I don't use makeup. My sisters, my friends, they love to use a lot of makeup. I don't use makeup. Now, I'm still a work in progress and I'm working on my health. But what I'm saying is, when we obey God, we have multiple blessings. Do you know, I was just reading in this book that I shared, it's talking about young people. And I've got a young man and a young woman in my home. Do you know that what we eat will affect how we are able to be temperate, how we are able to have self-control? If we're eating animal food, we're going to be less able to control our young people. They're going to be less able to have self-control. If we're eating foods like spiced foods, highly seasoned foods, it will be very difficult for us to have self-control. And that's what the enemy wants. The song that we sang, the judgment is set. The books have been open. How shall we stand in that great day? There has never been a time when it has been so serious for us to be mindful about what we eat, about what we wear, about what we are putting, what we watch, our entertainment, about what we're spending our time on, our money on. There has never been a more serious time than now for us to be so mindful about the impact our choices have. God has given us the power of choice. I can't tell you what to eat or how to eat. We can learn and advise, but at the end of the day, the choice is yours. The choice is mine. God doesn't force us to do what's good for us. We have a choice to make. And when we choose wrong, we have to deal with the consequences. I've made some wrong choices in my life, and I've had to deal with the painful consequences of it. Do you know what? Most of us, we are eating ourselves to an early grave. We are drinking ourselves to an early grave. And then we look and say, God, help me. Please pray for me. We need to be mindful about the choices we are making. We read earlier that when we make the wrong choices in our food, in our diet, in our lifestyle, it's just as bad as breaking the moral laws, committing adultery, lying, breaking the Sabbath. We look at those sins as very grave sins. But eating wrong is just as bad. So as we part, as we finish, I want us to meditate. I want us to meditate on the idea that God has given us the freedom of choice. God has given us the freedom of choice. Nathan, please can you mute? Thank you. God has given us the freedom of choice. Let's not abuse our freedom. And if we make a choice to do that, let's be prepared for the consequences, because the God who created our amazing bodies knows what he's talking about when he tells us what to eat, how to eat. He's the one who made us. Yes, Sister Ruby. Oh my, I've gone over time. Yes, Sister Ruby, and we'll finish.
It will be very brief. I just wanted to share, you mentioned when we're water to take it with a grain of salt, the good salt, pink salt or the Celtic salt. And
Yes.
when I started doing that, when I heard that from Barbara and I started to do it, it was amazing what happened to me, because before that I had problems with pica syndrome, where I was eating non-food stuff because of lack of not just calcium, just mineral. My body was kind of depleted. My mineral reserve was a bit depleted, and I was eating, so I can't even. One of these days, I'll tell you some of the stuff that I used to eat as an adult. I mean, it wasn't even long ago. It was like a few years ago. And when I started to do that, amazingly, my mineral reserve went up so much, until I didn't even know when I stopped eating these, craving for these things. But right now, I have no appetite for them. I'm just so fine now. And I just want to give God thanks for that. And I hope, encourage someone
Absolutely.
to have your water with the salt.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's simple things that we can start making changes on. Christianity and obedience to God is very practical. Very practical. Start somewhere. Start small and build on it. And build on it. We have the sanctuary, we have justification, we have sanctification, where it's little by little every day. God is changing you, little by little, changing you. So let's start somewhere. We've got the 8 laws of health. We've got all these ideas that we have shared today, and many others. Let's cut our meals to 2. Let's swap the big meal. Let's have it in the morning. And here's something light in the evening. I'm actually starting that tomorrow. So for my family, instead of having cereals and fruits in the morning, we are swapping that. We're going to be having the big meal in the morning. So that means I need to prepare tonight what we're going to eat tomorrow morning. And we're going to make sure I get them up early enough so that they can sit down and have enough time to chew and eat their food. If we want to be healthy, we need to prepare. What's important? If it's important for me to go to work, I prepare, I plan my day. My health is more important than anything. So I need to start being very practical and very deliberate about what actions I take, and for my children as well. So I pray that we're going to encourage each other as we are learning. This is not just for us to learn in theory. We want to apply it. And let's remember that when we have healthy blood, healthy body. When we have healthy cells, healthy body. I'm going to hand over to the Taklis now. Thank you so much.
Amen. Very interesting. What you've been talking about tonight. We started having our dinner for breakfast, and then our breakfast for the last meal, and we found it a lot better. Yeah. Yeah, because you need, after you're fasting while you sleep, aren't you? When you wake up, you break your fast breakfast, and you do need the better meal, the heavier meal in the morning. We've done that for a few years now, and we do find it beneficial. And all the other things you was talking about, we learned quite a lot, haven't we?
Yes.
Been good. Thank you. We're going to finish with a song called "How Big Is God?" because God is big. He made us. He knows. You know, He made everything.
He knows every part of us.
He does.
How big is God? How big and wide His vast domain? To try and tell, these lips can only start. He's big enough to rule His mighty universe, yet small enough to live within my heart. Though man may strive to go beyond the reach of space, to crawl beyond the distant shimmering stars, this room, a room so small within my master's house, the open skies but a portion of his yard. How big is God? How big and wide His vast domain? To try and tell, these lips can only start. He's big enough to rule His mighty universe, yet small enough to live within my heart. How big is God? How big is God? As winter chills may cause the shiny seeds to fall, to lie asleep till waked by summer's rain, the heart grows cold when warm and fraught with life anew. The Master's touch will bring the glow again. How big is God? How big and wide His vast domain? To try and tell, these lips can only start. He's big enough to rule His mighty universe, yet small enough to live within my heart. How big is God? How big is God?
Yes, God is so big, yet small enough to live within our heart.
Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Is all things to all men.
Amen. Sister Mugabe, are you able to close in prayer for us, please?
Let me take the prayer position. Our precious eternal Father in heaven, we want to thank you once more again for your daughter Miriam to come and tell us about this health message which goes with your word. May you continue to. I claim Proverbs 2 verse 6 says, wisdom comes from the mouth of Jehovah. May you continue to bless her with word, wisdom, knowledge,